Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada. Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Satgurum Brahma Vidvaram Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yatkripa Tamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam Paramananda Madhavam. All right, so let's go ahead and we will read from verse number 34. So we will read from 34 to 38. So if you can make sure you turn to that page. Yeah, and we will begin. Akirtim chapi bhutani kathayishyanti te avyayam Sambhavitasya cha kirtihi maranadatirichyate Hayadranat uparatam mansyante tvam maharathaha Yesham cha tvam bahumataha bhutva yasyasi laghavam Avachavadanshcha bahun vadishyanti tavahitaha Nindantastava samarthyam tato dukhataram nukim hato va prapsyasi swargam jitva va bhokshase mahim tasmaduttishta kaunteya yuddhaya krita nishchayaha sukha dukhe same kritva labha labhau jaya jayau Tato yuddhaya yujyasva naivam papamavapsyasi. All right. So last time we were seeing now that how Lord Krishna addressed Arjuna in the level of kirti. So from 34 until 36 is really where he says, Arjuna, even from the standpoint of a warrior, because a warrior values fame, even from that standpoint, you should fight. He says in 34, he says, my gosh, if you don't fight, people will keep talking about you. They will recount your dishonor. And for a warrior, dishonor is even more than death. Dishonor causes more sorrow than death. Because dishonor, it continues. Avyayam, it continues on and on and on. People always remember that one time where we did something wrong. It will continue. And it will continue for generations. So Lord Krishna says, even from the standpoint of being a warrior and the fame of a warrior, you should fight. Because dishonor is greater than death for a warrior. And he says in 35, he says, if you run away, people will talk about you. And the worst is the people whom you look up to. When the people who we look up to look down upon us, that is very painful. That's very painful because we look up at them. And we always want to be elevated or high in their eyes. We always want them to think the best of us. But he says, even these Maharathas, even Bhishma, Drona, Kripacharya, they will say that this Arjuna ran away from the battlefield. They will also talk about you. So Lord Krishna said, come on, Arjuna, what are you thinking? Then in verse 36, he even speaks about from the standpoint of ahitaha, means those who are Arjuna's enemies or those who are against Arjuna. He says, again, those who are your enemies, what will they say? They will criticize your samarthya, your capacity, your capability. And they will say words which are avachan, avachavadan, which I can't even say. They're unspeakable words. They will speak to you or speak about you in unspeakable ways. Is this what you want to happen? And so, mind you, this is the last standpoint that Lord Krishna is taking. Where he came from the standpoint of the highest self, he comes all the way down to this level because he wants to really address Arjuna's mind, just as a great teacher would do. They would really cater their teaching to the student's mind. And then we saw in 37 that Arjuna had that dilemma. He had that dilemma earlier when he asked Lord Krishna, I don't know which is better, if we win or if they win. And Lord Krishna says in verse 37, if you win, what will happen? You will enjoy this kingdom here on earth. If they win and if you die, you will get Swarga, you will get the higher worlds. So it's like a win-win situation. So therefore, Arjuna, yudhaya, you go to fight. For uttishta means get up, yudhaya, get up to do your dharma, get up to fight this war, krita nishchaya, with your own resolution. Earlier, you didn't have a resolution, you were all confused. Lord Krishna saying, I'm hoping by now you have a resolution. And therefore get up and fight with that firm resolve. Then the question comes, well, in what attitude should Arjuna fight this battle? And this is really speaking to us because all of us have something or the other that we have to face. And the Bhagavad Gita is definitely not the scripture to tell us to run away and hide. The Bhagavad Gita is to tell us to face everything that comes in our way. And Gurudev's commentary is so beautiful. He said, if you're thinking that someday all the waves are just going to stop in the ocean or all the waves of up and down are going to stop in life, that's never going to happen. Because the nature of this samsara is up and down. Just as the nature of the ocean is the waves going up and down. You and I have to learn how to swim. We have to learn how to tackle each wave. Some waves we have to duck underneath because they're too big. Some waves we can nicely catch and jump. And we have to learn how to swim well. And so what does Lord Krishna tell Arjuna? This is how you swim in life. This is how you go along or how you flow with whatever's happening. Not wanting it to go away, but really facing it and flowing with it as best as you can. He says, samadukhe same kritta labha alabho jaya ajayo tato yudhaya yujjasva naivam papam avapsisi. In verse number 38. He says, having made even or having made the same joy and sorrow, gain and loss, victory and defeat, then you engage in this battle and you won't get sin. So this is a very interesting way to look at things because Lord Krishna is not saying, be equanimous when you get the results. This is a partial understanding of how to act. He's saying be equanimous even before acting, not be equanimous after you get the results. Because if we're not equanimous before we act, there's no way we can be equanimous after getting the results. it doesn't happen. And how does equanimity come? Equanimity comes when I am acting for the purpose of something higher, what we call Ishvara Arpana Buddhi. It means I'm acting with the attitude that this is an offering to God. Ishvara, God. Arpana, offering. Buddhi, attitude. In this case, you can say it's an attitude of offering it to God. So whatever I'm doing, this is to either, you can see it from various standpoints. From a bhakta standpoint, you can see it as, I want to please my Lord, or I want to please my Guru. From someone who is, who loves to work for society or for the country, or likes to do service, they see God in the country, in society, in the community, in their family. And so they say, I'm doing this for them. I'm doing this for my family, for my community, for my society, for my country. This is what I'm doing. It's for something other than me. It's not just me. It's something greater than that. And so whenever we have this buddhi, then it becomes easy to be equanimous. Otherwise, when you and I act, and the action is because we want to gain something. I want to do this because I want to get more wealth, or I want more comfort. And if I don't get it, yes, I will be disappointed. And if I do get it, yes, I will be happy, because it's just for me. So the waves of ups and downs are going to be a lot steeper. But if it's something other than me, then it's easy to be equanimous. So that equanimity has to start before the action itself. It has to start with the intention. When the intention is selfless, then what happens is the result, we can have that equanimity in the result. So in this way, he says, equalize it. Equalize your joy, your sorrow, your gain, your loss, your victory, your defeat. Equalize it. Make it for something greater than you. The question that comes is, the why. I mean, can you really act for something other than our own selfish gain? Like, can we actually do an action because of something else? I mean, isn't the whole purpose of action to gain something for myself? The answer is very beautiful, that in karma yoga, we don't act for gain, but we act for growth. So whatever action we're doing is because we want to grow. We want to purify. We want to prepare ourselves. So it's not because we want to gain some materialistic thing or some selfish desire. It's because of growth. Because as we said last time, life is about self-evolution. Life is about growth. It's not about gain. It's about growth. And a question was asked last time is, how do you know that you have grown? It's easy to measure financial gain. It's easy because you can just look at your accounts and you can see. It's easy maybe to measure how a company has gained over the years, what's its gain. But how do you measure growth in a seeker? Growth is measured in terms of the character or the quality of our mind. The more sattvic the mind becomes, the more growth there is in the mind. So growth is directly proportionate to the peace that you feel in your life. The more peace you feel in your life, the more you're growing. So if in my life I feel peaceful, more peaceful, I have a greater sense of ease, then that means there is growth. But in my life, if I find that I'm still getting disturbed, still getting bogged down, still getting bummed out, still complaining, that means there's still a lot of growth that needs to happen. So karma yoga is concerned with our growth. And it was with this intention that we act in the world. A seeker acts in the world. So this is a very profound understanding. And he further says that if you do this, if you engage in this attitude, with this attitude, what happens is, naivam papam avapsyasi, you shall not incur sin. Whenever we hear the word sin, it is a action that's contrary to our own nature, as Gurudev puts it. And what he says here is sin is that we create more vasanas. We create more negative impressions in us. And this brings us down. Whenever we act selfishly, more likes and dislikes are formed. And thus it creates a deep impression by which we act again and again. And the detail of this I will actually show you in the next verse, so you can see the whole cycle of action. We will see in the next verse. So this papam avapsyasi is really preparing us for the next verse, where this word karma bandha, the bondage of karma, will come. Then we will see that in detail. Okay, so this much we have seen, and this much is the thought flow. Now, Lord Krishna says, okay, now Arjuna, this much I have told you, and this much is actually the essence of the Gita. This is what he's trying to say. So let's read the verse and then I'll explain further. Verse 39. Esha te bhita sankhye.
Esha te bhita sankhye.
Buddhi yoge tvimam shrunu.
Buddhi yoge tvimam shrunu.
Buddhya yukto yaya partha.
Buddhya yukto yaya partha.
Karma bandham prahasyasi.
Karma bandham prahasyasi.
Esha te vihita sankhye. Buddhir yoge tvimam shrunu. Buddhya yukto yaya partha. Karma bandham prahasyasi. I think I said buddhi, but this first line, it's buddhir. So just please note that. Okay, so in this verse, what is he saying? He says, te abhihita. Te means to you, abhihita. I have declared, esha, I have declared this to you. What is this? Buddhi sankhye. Buddhi sankhye means this wisdom in Sankhya. I have declared to you this wisdom concerning Sankhya. And he says, now, yoge tvimam shrunu. Now listen to the wisdom concerning yoga. Tvimam, tu imam means this. Now this, shrunu, listen to the wisdom. Here, buddhihi means wisdom concerning yoga. And yoga here means karma yoga. Buddhya yuktaha yaya parataha. By this buddhya, buddhya means the wisdom of karma yoga. When you are endowed, when you are yoked or endowed with this wisdom of karma yoga, O Paraka, O Arjuna, karma bandham prahasyasi. You shall cast off. Prahasyasi means you will cast off karma bandham, the bondage of karma. So please see in the first line, buddhi means the wisdom. Okay, and this buddhi you have to take with Sankhya and you have to take with yoge. So when you take it with Sankhya, means I have declared to you the buddhi Sankhya, the wisdom concerning Sankhya. Okay, so this is the first part. And then he says, now tu imam shunu, now you listen to the buddhihi, the wisdom, yoge, concerning yoga. Okay, so that way the first line should be understood. And the yoga word in the first line means karma yoga. Then I'm saying this because yoga can mean so many things, buddhi can mean so many things, but it is in this context that we take this verse. And when he says in the second line, buddhya yuktaha, buddhya here means in the second line, by the wisdom of that, what? Karma yoga. By the wisdom of karma yoga, karma bandham prahasyasi, you shall cast off the bonds of karma, means bandha, bonds of karma, action. Okay, so this much is clear. So this which has been thought to thee is wisdom concerning Sankhya. Now listen to the wisdom concerning yoga, having known which, O Partha, you shall cast off the bonds of action. So first, let us see the word Sankhya. What does this word Sankhya mean? So we know, or I hope we remember, that this chapter 2 is called Sankhya Yoga, right? So chapter 1 was called Arjuna Vishada Yoga, the yoga of Arjuna's grief. But chapter 2 is called Sankhya Yoga. The root kya means to tell. And it comes with the word sam. Sam means to tell well. So Sankhya means that which is said well. So that's why we call numbers Sankhya. Okay. But in this context, it comes from samyak khyayate pratipadyate atma tattvam anaya, which means that which tells well. Sankhya here means Upanishad. So the word Sankhya means Upanishad because Upanishad expounds very well. And that which is expounded by Sankhya is Sankhya. And that which is expounded is Atma, or the self. So Sankhya means Upanishad. That which is expounded by the Upanishad, which is Atma, becomes Sankhya. So when he says, I have just told you Sankhya, I have just told you about the knowledge of the self. I have just told you. Where did I tell you? Specifically in verses 11 to 25. I have just told you all about Atma, that pure awareness, that pure consciousness. And I have, had or said many verses with regard to that. That is Atma. Now, one more thing about the word Sankhya, there's also a school of philosophy called Sankhya. So that's different from Sankhya Yoga. That's a whole different matter. That is a school of philosophy that is different from Advaita Vedanta. Why they're called Sankhya is because they really define everything very well. They have 24 tattvas or principles that they really lay out. And then they have Purusha and Prakriti. So that's a different school of philosophy. Here, Sankhya means Atma. Okay? So Lord Krishna said, I have told you about Atma. Now I'm going to tell you about Buddhi Yoga, means that wisdom of karma or karma yoga. Why? Because Arjuna, this is what you need right now. I gave you the knowledge of the self. I gave it to you, but right now it seems like you haven't absorbed it yet. Lord Krishna is thinking to Arjuna. Arjuna hasn't absorbed it fully. And he hasn't absorbed it because he wasn't prepared for this. To know the self, to gain the knowledge of the highest, our minds have to be really prepared. And so Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna, now I'm going to tell you about Karma Yoga. Because when I tell you about Karma Yoga, this is going to prepare your mind. And when your mind is prepared, then you will be able to abide in this knowledge, absorb this knowledge, and all your bonds will go. You will be able to break free from your bondages. So now the question here comes is, how does Karma Yoga exactly free us? So this is something that's really important and key to understanding these verses that are going to come up in the Gita, because, you know, why not just perform action? Why perform it in the attitude or in the bhava of Karma Yoga? What's the difference? And how does Karma Yoga actually release us? And what is this cycle of bondage that we're actually going through? So I've got like a few charts which I'm going to show you, and you'll understand better with the illustration. So I'm going to share my screen so that you can see, and I think you'll understand better with this illustration, and then we can talk more about it. So the first thing I'm going to show you is this, right? The first thing to understand about karma, and if you have this background, you will understand the rest of the verses very easily. So first thing is, the first concept is karma brings bondage. This is the first concept. The English is on top, the Sanskrit is in the bottom, so you know everybody can understand. How does karma bring bondage? Okay, karma brings bondage in this way, that when we selfishly act, what happens is we get the results of the action. Everybody gets the results of the action, right? This is what happens. We act, we get the results of action. But what happens is it leaves a vasana, it leaves an impression. Why? Because if I really, really liked the result, if it gave me so much joy that I liked it, you know, I have such a strong like for that action or that act because it gave me so much joy. So first we'll go with like, then we'll go with dislike later. So I have such a strong like for that. And because I have such a strong like for that, what happens is it creates another desire, saying, okay, let me get it again. Let me do that act again. Or not only let me do that same act again, let me do more of it so I can get more of it again. I want to feel that happiness I felt when I got the result of that action. And so therefore, this pushes me into action again. So very simple example is that, let's say I acted to, you know, I wanted to buy a house, okay? Just a house, regular house. So I got it and I feel so incredibly happy. I feel so happy with this house. And so I like this. So then what I'm thinking is, now that I bought one house, why not have two, right? Why not have one here and then one somewhere else? Because, you know, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that happiness. So then it's going to push me again to act, okay? And this is going to go on and on and on, because I'm always going to have this vasana of some like or dislike. Let's take the example of dislike. So I did an action, and let's say I got the result. I bought a house and I got the result, but I didn't really like it. I didn't really like it. So I have this vasana of dislike. I didn't like the house. But then I want to seek something else because I didn't like that. So now I want to seek something else. So then again, I'm going to say, okay, I want to be happy. I want to like something. So again, I'm going to go out to act. I'm going to desire to act. And then again, I'm going to act. So this whole thing goes on and on and on. And this is how our lives go. This is what we do. This is how we spend our days. We act, we get the results. We either like or dislike it. And if we like it, we want to do it again, or we want more of it, and then we act again. If we dislike it, then we're thinking, okay, well, how will I get happiness then? What's going to make me happy? Let me try that, or let me try something else. So we desire something else and we act again. So this is what the bondage is. This is karma eva bandha. That karma, that action is bondage. And it goes, this is that cycle. So now, how do you go beyond this cycle? So the next step would be karma yoga, right? And this is what karma yoga does. Karma yoga brings purity. So if karma brings bondage, karma yoga brings purity. How? So there are two main aspects to karma yoga. And, as we expound on it, we will see in the upcoming verses, we will expound more on these aspects. The first one you already know, because we saw it's selfless, dedicated action. So it's dedicated to something higher, bigger than me, right? And this is what we call Ishwara Arpana Buddhi. And this is what I explained previously. So this selfless, dedicated action, when it's for something bigger, something higher, something other than just me, what happens is I'm able to develop what we call prasada buddhi. Prasada buddhi means the attitude of prasada, acceptance. And I'm able to accept because it's a bigger picture. It's for a bigger cause. It's not just me. So whatever happens, let it happen. So my mind is not in joy, sorrow, elated, or bummed out. It's not fluctuating so much. And when I have this prasada buddhi, then what happens is, instead of a vasana, or a like and dislike, again, pushing me into action, what actually happens is my mind starts to calm down. And I gain what is called chitta shuddhi. My mind starts to become pure. And selfless action is actually very, very fulfilling. We will find that when we are engaged in selfless work, you feel a different kind of peace in your heart. It's very different. It's not like this kind of thing that we normally feel, with regular action. With selfless action, it's really, really beautiful. You feel peaceful. And what happens is, after selfless action, after this purity happens, when this purity happens, we will get vairagya. Vairagya means dispassion. It means we stop desiring these petty things. We stop desiring this wealth and name and fame and company and, all property. We stop desiring all of these things. We stop, we grow over it. Vairagya is it's not giving up of desire, but you grow above and beyond that desire. So it's a very natural and mature process. This is what karma yoga does. So you can just imagine that instead of being stuck in that cycle and our vasana is really going all over the place and growing and getting deeper, what's happening in karma yoga is that we are getting purer. We're getting purer because we're always connected to something greater. Now, a question might come that, wow, isn't this, still a cycle? Aren't we still in a cycle here? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes, definitely. Because when we can get stuck in this also. We can get stuck into doing selfless work and being fulfilled and living our lives. And many people do that, right? We get stuck in just that. But what happens naturally, or what's supposed to happen, is this next thing where upon doing selfless action and developing that prasada buddhi, gaining that purity and now having an absence of desire towards the material world, what happens is one starts to seek deeper. One starts to say, now I want something more. I've engaged myself out in the world. I've gotten fulfillment, but I think there's something more. I think there's something deeper, and I want that which is deeper. And that's when the pursuit of knowledge arises. The pursuit of knowledge doesn't just arise just like that. It takes a lot of purity for even the thought of, I want to know God, I want to know more, I want to know deeper. It takes a lot of purity for that thought to come. And when this pursuit of knowledge happens, then what happens is knowledge leads to liberation. When I am able to realize the truth, that directly liberates me. And that's called moksha. And that I put exit because it means you're exiting. We're exiting out of this circle, of this cycle. This is this karma bandham prahasyasi. Okay? This is what happens. This is how karma yoga can slowly liberate us. Okay? So I hope this point is clear. That karma in itself, by itself, action by itself, it will keep us stuck in this cycle. It will do it. And, we don't need to study Shastra. We can just look at our lives. How many times we've gone down this, and we have not gotten what we wanted. And so we keep going down that road. But as we grow, we will pursue karma yoga. We will engage in karma yoga, and no doubt we will be fulfilled. We will be fulfilled because to dedicate ourselves to something higher is very beautiful. It's a very beautiful thing. But it is still a cycle. So please note that is still a cycle. Slowly, we will begin to seek deeper. We will begin to seek knowledge, and that knowledge will liberate. So this is how Lord Krishna is leading Arjuna. Because clearly that jnana yoga, or that knowledge of the self, it didn't hit him quite yet. Because the purity was lacking. So Lord Krishna says, okay, let's work on your purity, Arjuna, and let's go that route, and let's see what happens. And this is the thought process. Okay. Now, Lord Krishna is going to say, this is the thought process. And I'm also going to tell you, Arjuna, the difference between karma and karma yoga. Karma is action. Karma yoga is that selfless, dedicated action. So those two aspects with prasada buddhi. When we talk of karma yoga, always bring those two aspects. So I'm going to highlight to you the difference between these two things so you can see it very clearly for your own self. And this is the thought process for the next verse. So let us read verse 40. Neha vikramana shosti.
Neha vikramana shosti.
Pratyavayo na vidyate.
Pratyavayo na vidyate.
Swalpamapyasya dharmasya.
Swalpamapyasya dharmasya.
Trayate mahato bhayat.
Trayate mahato bhayat.
Neha bhikramana shosti. Pratyavayo na vidyate. Swalpamapyasya dharmasya. Trayate mahato bhayat. So what he says here, he says, in karma yoga, na iha abhikrama nashaha asti. Na iha. Iha here in Karma Yoga, abhikramaha na nashaha asti. Abhikramaha means effort. Nashaha, the loss of effort, is not there in Karma Yoga. Number one. Then pratyavayaha na vidyate means production. Pratyavaya here means production of contrary results is not there. Number three, swalpam api asya dharmasya. Even swalpam, even very little api, even very little of this dharma, this duty, even very little of this duty done, trayate mahataha bhayat. It protects one from great fear. So he's saying that in this karma yoga, there's no loss of effort, nor is there any harm, production of contrary results. Even a little bit of this knowledge, or even a little bit of this practice of yoga, protects one from great fear. So let us look at karma. So in karma, first of all, there is a lot of effort involved. And in any action, there's a lot of effort involved. But what happens with karma is that we don't feel that we have gained anything. For example, if the action is not finished, we don't feel we have gained anything. So Adi Shankaracharya ji brings a very simple example of farming. You know, if you sow the seed, then you must water it. You must ensure that there's sunlight. You must ensure to look after it every day. And only then it will yield its results. Mostly the results you will see in the end. Or if we take up anything, if we're creating a whole company, right? So we step by step, brick by brick, we're building it. And you know, what happens if it doesn't happen? What happens if it doesn't work out? You feel like you lost everything because there was a goal and we're working towards the goal and we didn't gain it. We didn't get it. So we feel like all the effort's gone. All the money we invested in something, it's all gone. Everything that I put in this, it's all gone. Don't we say that in day-to-day life? We feel a great loss when something has not become truly fulfilled. But see, in Karma Yoga, it's a very different understanding or different line of thinking because, again, as I said, it's not about gain, it's about growth. So whether or not that business succeeded or failed, or that education, you know, made us make X amount of money or versus Y amount of money, that doesn't matter. One can be outwardly successful or outwardly a failure, but inside, actually, in Karma Yoga, you're always growing. You're always growing. So there's no effort lost because every step of the way, purity is building. Remember, when Karma Yoga is dedicated to something higher, what happens is the perfection in our action increases, right? It's not that when we're doing something for ourselves or by ourselves, we're just maybe, you know, you make a meal for yourself and it's like a 2-minute microwave meal. But when you make it for other people, it's a very grand thing. So when we're actually doing things for a greater purpose, we grow so much. So in Karma Yoga, there is no effort lost, unlike regular karma. Then he says, pratyavaya na vidyate. He says there's no contrary result. So what used to happen is, particularly in the Veda, in the Karma Kanda, there were a lot of rituals. There are a lot of rituals and there are a lot of prescriptions on how to perform a ritual. And if something wasn't done the exact way that it said, or something was missed, you know, there's a lot of portions. If something was missed, then what happens? A contrary result can come, you know? Like, I think once they did a yaga, somebody did a yaga to have Indra, the Devata, killed. But in that yaga, he mispronounced something. And so the person who came out of the fire, it happened that that person would not kill Indra, but that person would be killed by Indra. So you can see that there is this pratyavaya, something contrary can happen. This is what happens in karma per se. But in karma yoga, there's no side effects. Like what Guruji says, there's no side effects. You do it with the purity of your heart, and that's it. It's not going to harm anybody in any way. It's not going to harm anybody, and it's not such a ritualistic thing in the sense that I have to do this step and this step and this step and this step. It's an attitude. It's not so much to do with the actual action and the system of it and the amount of it. And sometimes we get a headache with all of this stuff, but it's really the attitude with which we perform. So he says, you don't have to worry about the loss of effort. You don't have to worry about any contrary results or doing it in such a systematic way, or you don't have to worry if you miss this piece or miss that piece. And he says, even if we do a little bit of it, even just a little bit, that much will protect us from great fear. What is the fear here is that samsara, that fear of bondage, of transmigration, of always coming back. He says, just even do a little bit, just engage in it a little bit. And that will go a long way. Remember, there's a famous Sanskrit Subhashita that goes something like this. He says, even an ant who is walking step by step, that ant will reach its destination, versus something or someone that hasn't started yet. The person who hasn't started will never go anywhere. But at least the person who's walking, who's taking steps, even if it's baby steps, that person will reach. So swalpam api, just even little bit, trayate. It will protect you from this great fear of bondage, of this feeling miserable. So therefore, engage in it. Then he brings up a very, very beautiful verse, and we're just going to touch up on it, but it's a grand verse. He says, now I'm also going to tell you a little bit. So he's in the process of saying, what's the difference between karma and karma yoga? Let me tell you a little bit more about the differences between the two. So verse number 41. Vyavasayatmika buddhihi.
Vyavasayatmika buddhihi.
Ekeha kuru nandana.
Ekeha kuru nandana.
Bahushakhayanantascha.
Bahushakahyanantascha.
Buddhayo vyavasayinam.
Buddhayo vyavasayinam.
Vyavasayatmika buddhihi. Ekeha kuru nandana. Bahushakhayanantascha. Buddhayo vyavasayinam. He says here, Vyavasayatmika buddhihi. Vyavasayatmika means one-pointed, single-pointed buddhihi, determination. So there is eka, means there is one single-pointed determination. Iha. Iha where? In karma yoga. There is a single-pointed determination. But bahushakhahi anantascha. There is bahushaka, like many, many branches. Anantaha, endless many branches. Buddhayaha are the thoughts of avyavasayinam, of those who are irresolute, of those who have so many desires. That's what he's really saying. He's saying, hear, O joy of Kurus, there is but a single one-pointed determination. Many branched and endless are the thoughts of the irresolute. what happens in Karma Yoga? In Karma Yoga, there is that single pointed focus. That single pointed focus, you can see it as to please God. You can see it as to please God. You can see it as to serve the world, to serve others. But all of it really is to purify the mind. That's what Karma Yoga does. Whether it is, I see it as I'm pleasing my God, I'm pleasing my Guru, or I'm serving the world, whatever it is, really the single pointed purpose of Karma Yoga is Chitta Shuddhi, purity of mind. And so one becomes so clear about life. There's no other doubts there. But when one is just engaging in regular karma or regular action, Bahu Shaka, there's endless desires. I'm doing this because I want more comfort. I'm doing this because I really want more social interaction. Doing this because I want more name and fame. I'm doing this because I want to go see the world more. There's so many branches. It's like the thought goes outside. It goes outside as opposed to just staying single pointed. And the secret to really achieving anything in life is single pointed focus. Is this vyavasayatmika buddhi. And very beautifully, our Swamiji, when we were learning this verse, he said there are only two kinds of people in life. One is the one who has infinite goals. Bahushaka, infinite goals, always wanting to pursue something else, pursue this, pursue that. The other one who has the infinite as the goal. This is vyavasayatmika buddhi. The infinite is the goal, and therefore I know I have to purify the mind to attain knowledge to realize that infinite. That is vyavasayatmika buddhi. And really speaking, when everything is centered on one goal, then life becomes so easy. Decisions become so quick because there's nothing else life is about. It's just about evolving and growing. More about this verse we will see next class, okay? Because this verse it's too beautiful. I want to do it justice. So we'll do it next class. But now I'll just review what we have done and then we'll close. So today we really spoke about how Lord Krishna said that so far, he said in verse 39, he said, so far, what I have spoken to you is called Sankhya Yoga. The yoga concerning the self or the knowledge of the self. Because Sankhya means Atma. And specifically, I spoke to you about that in verses 11 to 25. Now, I'm going to speak to you about the Karma Yoga, Yoga Buddhi, because this is what's required to really go to Sankhya, to really realize the self, which is Atma. And once you know, or once you're aware about this Karma Yoga practice, what happens is, Karma Bandham Prahasyasi, you are released, or you are able to drop this Karma Bandha. And we saw today the cycle of action, how that action, that karma will lead to karma phala, the result of action, which when we get it, when it's a selfish action, it will increase our vasanas in the form of likes and dislikes. There are some things we will like, there are some things we will dislike, and these likes and dislikes will push us to act again. When they push us to act again we go and around and around and around in this cycle of action. So he says from there, come to what we know as Karma Yoga, where you have two components, Ishvara Arpana Buddhi, selfless dedicated action, and Prasada Buddhi, accepting the results. When we act this way, what happens is that we gain purity. Our vasanas actually get exhausted. We go beyond likes and dislikes, because whenever we're doing something for the bigger picture, we cannot think about what I want or what I feel like doing. It's always about the vision. And when we do this, we attain what is called vairagya, or the absence of desire for the world. And slowly, after some time, when this vairagya becomes ripe or mature, we will want to seek deeper. We will want to know more. And that will lead us to knowledge, and that knowledge will give us liberation. This is how we come out of this cycle of karma. And he says, Arjuna, I'm going to now spend a few verses telling you about the difference between karma, regular action, and karma yoga. And he says, in karma yoga, there's never any loss of effort. No matter what happens on the outside, there's always inside growth. And that's the most beautiful thing. And we talked about in the beginning how to measure growth. That is through a sattvic mind. The more peaceful my mind is becoming, the more I am growing. So he says that in karma yoga, there's never a loss of effort. You're never going to get contrary results. There's no side effects, right? There's no, you don't have to follow so much of a particular system to do things in a particular ritualistic order. I mean, you still have to do things in order, but this is in comparison to rituals, how the rituals were. You don't have to do it that way. And even just a little bit will free you from this fear of this transmigration. And further, he says that in karma yoga, what is really, really important is that single-pointed determination, what we call vyavasayatmika buddhihi. In karma, the mind is really just scattered in infinite desires. And whenever our mind is scattered, there's very little we can achieve. So more about that we will take up in the next class. I will just say the closing prayer, and then I have a few announcements to tell you. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Namaha. Hari Om.